one of the things that I claim about this course is I claim that I'm number 4 and that this lecture is really just the tip of the iceberg. Like this lecture is that I do every Thursday is really just the starting point for a week of you, first and foremost, of what you do between Thursday and Tuesday. How's the temperature? Do we need our reflexive system turned on? Because it's going to get hot, isn't it? So it's a reflexive system. This is the second most important thing for you to learn this week, is how this box in the window works. You know how this box in the window works? It's when I turn it on, it's set to 60. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Just blast.
Oh, yeah.
What could possibly go wrong if it was set to 60? Just leave it on. Actually, since it's cold out today, I'm turning it to fan only. Look at that. So that system behavior in the window is the clearest analogy to what architecture should do. Okay. Think about what I might possibly be talking about while we head into this. Okay. We're already deep into the content of the course. I'm a little pissed off, and I demand certain things out of this class. First thing we demand is clarity on the assignment, on the assignments. Right? We've solved one thing, but we are far from clear about these assignments, right? You're still a little pissed off about the assignments not being clear, right? Or no? Maybe you're fine. How about a little bit more clarity on the assignments, right? You saw grades and feedback. Did you see the feedback? Did you see the rubric?
Yeah.
It's crystal clear. I have no questions for you about that, Robert. Or I have questions about that. Question.
I would maybe put in the bright things what you consider a 15 out of 15.
A 16 out of 16. Can I put something in bright space?
That's a 4.0, so it's an A. A 3 out of 4 is a B, so that's like anywhere from
12.
8 to 12.
Somewhere on 12.
Yeah. Under that, a 2.0 is a C.
So
And
like
then,
8.
uh,
8 points is a C.
Yeah, 1 is a D, and it's 0 is an F. I'm a material.
Yeah, material that can we. I think what you're trying to say, Caitlin, is right. Can we see an example of what you're looking for? Yes, you can. Here's an example of what we're looking for.
That's a 16 out of 16.
Yes, 16 out of 16. Actually, I'm lying. It's a 24 out of 24 because this is in week 7 when we're asking you to do a lot more than we're asking you to do this week. We're stacking new things every week. Don't have to do the video yet. Don't do the video for Tuesday. Please don't do the video for Tuesday. But in the caption, you don't have to do the caption for Tuesday. But we want a claim and a question. And then we want that first phrase at the beginning of the caption that is kind of a even smaller capturing of the main idea of the claim. Okay, so we'll look into that.
So this diagram represents.
It's not a diagram, but thank you.
Or
It's an analysis. And it got this image choice 4 out of 4. Why? Because we have access to the human experience, the human scale, architectural scale experience in the foreground. We can project ourselves in here and have a sense of what it's like to be a woman at night walking home in the dark. Right? We can do that. We can run that test. So we have access to the human scale here in relationship to the larger urban context of Chicago. We see the street grid, we see high rises down here, and residential area, a main street, an open public open space. We get a sense of that relationship. And out of this, we can draw a diagram because of all the glass in the ground floor here and here, and what imagines back here. We can now draw a diagram that looks something like this. There's a block of residential fabric easing housing demand. It's affordable housing. Footnote. I can't see that it's affordable housing here, but I know from the quick reading I did on it as a student that it's affordable housing. Footnote. I have to put a footnote because I don't see that. I don't see the affordable housing in the image. And then I see the ground plane and I see this glass wall of library, and it's a public library, and I can go through and I can hang out here, I can hang out here. Here's the traffic whizzing by, but this is a generous, comfortable urban realm up front. And at night, as long as the library is open still, even when it's not open, it just feels safer if I'm a woman. I'm not going to come around the corner walking here and say, oh shit, where's my pepper spray? I better be ready. Where's my pepper spray? I'm not going to say that here. I might say that if I'm walking this way and then turn the corner down the street, right? Because I'm not stupid. And my parents love me, so I have pepper spray. And so, first of all, if I can avoid walking down there, I'm not going to walk down there. But if I do walk down there, I'm going to make sure my pepper spray is handy. But here, it passes the pepper spray test. It's good architecture that produces good urban form. It produces welcoming, safe, it's a safe urban realm. It's not just about the building. We don't, in the 20th century, the architect would have said, look at this great building that I designed, and they'd frame in on the architecture, and all we talk about is the fake wood, the ample windows, the roof garden, the green roof. We talk about this beautiful library, and it'll be all about the object that is the building. And when we used to study architecture, we used to look at Corbusier, we used to look at Mies van der Rohe, we used to look at MVRDV and Zaha Hadid and say, wow, what a sexy building, what a beautiful object, what a wonderful, powerful form. End of story. The way we used to photograph buildings for magazine covers is very tightly framed on the architecture itself. And no people. Get out of that, get out of the way. I'm taking an architectural photograph. Please respect that we need no people in their photograph. That was the rules of the 20th century of architecture. You see that sometimes still, but have you heard the name Iwan Baan? He's an architectural photographer. Any building that you can visualize in your head, the thing you're visualizing in your head is 8 times out of 10, it's from a photograph by Iwan Baan. He's the most important and influential architectural photographer of the 21st century because he's broken the rules successfully. He doesn't photograph buildings like this, he photographs buildings like this. He broke the unwritten rule, the taboo against including the context. He includes the context. He was one of the first architectural photographers to use drones. The other thing he does is there's always people, almost always people. He considers himself to be a portrait photographer, but he prefers to take pictures of people in very powerful spaces created by architecture. So this is a great photo because it has the context. It's a good analysis because it looks like someone went in and painted the building. Like you're not conscious so much of these colored overlays filtering. There's not a big piece of orange plastic between us and the object. No, the colors are embedded in the actual surface and material. Brianna worked very hard to capture pixel for pixel. Didn't take her that long because she's mastered the skills of the quick select tools of Photoshop. So the second thing we're looking for is a very careful and effective exploration of what's going on here by using those overlays and the suppression of color and the bringing forward of color. I might have taken a point off because she didn't acknowledge the continuity of the sidewalk. It would have been better if the sidewalk was yellow all the way up and down the street in both directions, including the crosswalks. Please acknowledge the continuity of this architecture. This is the sidewalk, including the crosswalks. Despite the fact that in the 1920s, the automobile industry made up a new word, jaywalking. Believe it or not, humans are supposed to be in the street right there. It's a crosswalk. Acknowledge that, make it part of the pedestrian realm, the continuous pedestrian realm that is the crosswalk. The way the rules are written, these crosswalks, the pedestrian has the right of way. The driver has to yield to the pedestrian, make it yellow. Questions about the second thing? The third thing, I don't think well, let's try this.
Outside the public library entrance, a general setback is given back to the streetscape to indicate a new social circulation space for the public.
You can use another photo? Yes, you can.
The ground floor is enclosed predominantly with a glass facade that allows for transparency into the public library and community rooms, which encourages more visitors to come in.
That's not cheating? It's not cheating.
The upper residential floors in the building feature 37 CHA units, 29 affordable units, and 7 market rate units that help to provide housing among the lower class.
Footnote, because it's information.
The upper level facade is composed of terracotta cladding and corrugated metal panels that blend into the surrounding brick building so that it doesn't stand out too much within the smaller neighborhood scale. The building makes it a point to incorporate green spaces into the design with a terrace on the second floor and a community garden in the back, both in which allow for better social and built environment.
See that? So she didn't have a claim and she didn't have a question. I'm not sure why. I guess this was still early in the semester. But any questions about the translation from the image to the text? The 5 sentences. Here's a hint. Because the point of all of this, what is the point of this? The point of this is that we're trying to figure out what the architecture does and how the architecture does what it does. In the 20th century, we used to say, is it beautiful or is it not beautiful? And that was it. Nope, we added one more thing. What does it mean to us as architects? Forget about what it means to the users, the normal people, the plebeians, the poor mere mortals who are not architectural gods like us. We don't care how they experience it. We don't care what it means to them. Is it great art that we architects within our little white box of architecture can appreciate? That's all we cared about. No longer. Architecture in the 21st century, architecture means what it means because it does what it does. It's Forrest Gump, simple Forrest Gump logic. Architecture does what it does as the sum total of each of its parts. So the analysis, remember the root of the word analysis means to take things apart and understand it in each of its parts. The 5 sentences starts with the most obvious thing and moves to the more and more subtle things, and it builds an argument. It's a logical sequence of points that stack together, goes through. The sidewalk does this. The housing does this. The green roof does this. The glass of the library does this. And together, each of those moves creates this larger outcome that is greater than the sum of its parts. Exactly what we're always looking for in architecture. We're looking for outcomes that are greater than the sum of its parts. This exercise requires us to talk about the points that come directly out of the analysis image and weave them together to understand how each element and each relationship does what it does. And then taken together, how is the overall outcome greater than the sum of its parts? And we do that so that we can then go forth and do likewise. If we understand how architecture succeeds in past examples, we have a better chance of producing architecture that builds on that success and succeeds even further. What could be simpler or more important for us as architects? So here's the secret. This is a very valuable thing. If this is what we're doing, how does that have a connection with how I write the first sentence? Yes, it does. The way you write each sentence has an impact on how we figure out what the architecture does and how the architecture does it. Adriana could have said, there's glass on the bottom floor, allowing, I wouldn't even say, there's glass on the bottom floor where the library is, right? How's that? It's true, isn't it? It follows Missouri rules. I'm not saying anything that isn't backed up by what I'm showing you. Missouri rules is friends don't let friends say anything that they're not showing, right? I'm showing you the glass walls of the library, so I can say the bottom floor is a library surrounded by glass. So no problem, right? Wrong. You're describing the architecture. This is what we used to do in the 20th century. It's what you did in middle school and high school and maybe History Theory 1. You wrote sentences that described the architecture. You did it when you did those lame precedent studies that didn't go deeper. We want you to go deeper than the lame precedent studies. We want you to say this. We want you to say what Adriana said. I'm going to include the description, but I'm going to not stop with the description. Watch this. The wall of glass surrounding the library opens up the interior to the exterior, softening the boundary between the two. I'm not just describing the glass around the library. I'm saying this thing, and I'm describing it so you know what I'm talking about, does this other thing. It has an impact. The key to a successful sentence is that it captures what the impact is. What is it doing and how is it doing it? Without that, you're just reporting. You're just saying, yeah, there's a library housing project in Chicago. The bottom floor is surrounded by glass. There's affordable housing above. There's a nice green roof, and it's adjacent to greenery on the side, on the generous sidewalk, and greenery in the back. That is pure description. Thank you for your pure description. 1 point out of 4. Does that make sense? It's a very good pure description. 1 point out of 4. How much is 1 point out of 4? What's that? Is it letter grade? It's a D. Thank you for your clear description, D. Right? How do I get an A? You do what Adriana does. She says, the wider sidewalk planted with trees offers a generous path for pedestrians going by the building. This thing that you see does this other thing. It has this impact. The glass surrounding the public library opens that experience, welcoming people in and softening the boundaries between interior and exterior. This architectural feature does this thing. It has an impact. Does that make sense? The greenery on the roof welcomes users from the library to bring their work up to the green roof and allowing others in affordable housing to take advantage as well, bringing these communities together. What does the green roof do? It brings the communities together. The affordable housing footnote, because I can't see that it's affordable housing, so I have to put a footnote to support my assertion. The affordable housing eases the housing crisis that Chicago, like every other city in the US, is experiencing. And finally, and this is the reach point, the 5th sentence, the one that isn't so obvious, but I want us to embrace as the author of this. I'm Adriana. The stretch point is that by making this a generous pedestrian realm and opening up the ground floor, I'm bridging between this park in the back and the streetscape in the front, giving a sense of continuity of the ground plane as a public amenity to the community. And here's the diagram version of that. I'm not opposed to diagrams. I'm just opposed to diagrams that get in the way of understanding exactly how architecture does what it does. This is what the architecture does. This is how the architecture does what it does. It's important to understand both what the architecture does and how the architecture does what it does. Okay. Does that clarify the analysis? And we're doing this again. You're doing the analysis again between now and Tuesday. This time, some of you have already, one of you made a video. How did you do that? Who did that? Anyway, you don't have to make a video yet. We didn't ask you for a claim and a provocative question, but some of you did it anyway. Thank you. We now want you to do that for real this coming week. So choose an image, either the image you already have, either maybe you got 4 out of 4 on the image and idea, then keep your image. If you got 3 out of 4, look for a different image. Then the analysis. None of you, I don't think, got 4 out of 4 on the analysis part, the precision and impact of your drawing over it. Spend more time, be more precise, use your quick selection tools in Photoshop more effectively, and probably spend more time. Notice how Adriana is not putting yellow over the trees or over the people or over the cars. Yellow goes on the concrete of the sidewalk. So that's the hardest thing to get 4 out of 4 on. Again, probably should be 8 points, worth 8 points because it's so important. The next part is, what's the relationship between the evidence and the 5 sentences in the argument, the middle 5 sentences of your 7-sentence paragraph. Each sentence should be a direct translation out of the discovery, the insights out of the image and into the sentence, the way we just went through. It's not a description. It's a description with a powerful verb, and then you're characterizing the impact. What's the effect? What's the outcome of that thing that you just pointed out in the image? Question about that? Evidence argument? Some of you nailed it. I don't know how. Then the next thing we're asking you to do is, once you write your 5-sentence argument, what then are you in a position to say? Before Abiana went through and composed those 5 sentences, she was not in a position to make a claim because she didn't really know what the different parts were. But now that she does, once she's done that, now she knows, now she has this feeling, this is what happens when we write. We make sense of the world. We get a strong feeling about what's going on. And then we're able to say something like, by weaving together the public realm around the building through a public program in the building and up into the building, this intervention heals the community that had suffered decades of neglect and underinvestment. Boom, that's a powerful statement that we cannot make unless and until we work through the evidence. And we don't make it lightly, we don't make it right away. It is born out of the argument of the 5 sentences, and then it goes at the beginning. And because the claim was born out of the 5 sentences that came directly or born out of the image, then it's hard to get it wrong. It's hard to say something that you're not showing. And that's a machine for creating dependable understanding. So the world is the #1 source of understanding. Our tools of architecture, the reason you're going to college, the tools of architecture are a powerful way to create dependable understandings. And based on that dependable understanding, we then catapult ourselves into whatever comes next, whether it's the next paragraph of whatever it is you're writing out in the world, or the next design move you make in the studio. Valuable stuff, very powerful basis for your studio design. If you go through this process, you don't just say, I did this precedent and here's what it looks like, now I'm going to design my building. No, you gather the energy of the precedent, and then it shoots out of the precedent into your new design like a rocket. Can you feel it? Is that okay? Does that help? Did I answer the question? Phew, I'm glad I had this. You guys are tough. So that's what we do. So let's talk about the air conditioner. The air conditioner is a reflexive mechanism. It works on a negative feedback loop. What's a reflex? When you go to the doctor, does she take a little rubber hammer and hit your knee? We used to do that. You don't get your knee hit. You do? You do? What is that? Why do we do that? It's to check to see. Let's see if it works. And it's hard to do yourself because you kind of have to be surprised. It happened a little bit. I'm not thinking kick. The kick mechanism is automatically built in to the system. This is a system. It has certain mechanisms that are programmed in, that are designed into the system to respond automatically. Okay? On a good day, architecture has reflexive mechanisms designed into it. I'm walking down the street, right? Can you feel yourself walking down the street? You come in front of the building, and the system, which is the body, mind, eye system, placed in space and form of the architecture of the street, there is an automatic reflex response. I walk down the street, I come here and I go, oh. My body responds by, I stand up a little straighter, I breathe a little more deeply, I look to the left, and I'm attracted. It's like, oh man, if only I had time, I would so walk in there. There's even a coffee shop in there. Maybe I do have time. I don't have to be at class. I'm going to go in. I'm going to prepare my lecture there. So there's an automatic system response. It's programmed into how humans engage the built environment, right? If that's not what we do as architects, then I don't know what we do. That is what we do. That is architecture. So there is a built-in reflexive response into the system of human bodies in space, and it's mediated by social relationships. If I'm a homeless person, then I don't feel so welcome. That's part of the programming of the social norms. And then there's gender, sexual identity, race, ethnicity, religion. All of these things are part of this larger system. It's not separate from architecture. It is baked into the larger system. It is part of what we deal with. And part of it is economics. Remember, someone said capitalism? That is part of the system as well. And actually, capitalism is one of the most beautiful and horrifying reflexive mechanisms in human history. And we're going to look at that. So this is the way we diagram negative feedback loops. Let's start with the air conditioning. Here's what temperature it is. It's, what is it set to? 76 or something? 78?
No, you said it's a fan.
But 78 fan. I don't know if
Well, I think
fan's just going to stay on. But does it say auto also? Can you check to see if it says auto? The auto, is the light lit right next to the word auto? Let's say it is, okay? So when the temperature drops below 78, I think it's warmer than that here, isn't it? When the temperature drops below 78, you will hear the fan slow down or stop, right? So 78 is the set point, and when it hits 78, it turns off. It's a negative feedback loop. Does that make sense? And so it's going to automatically do what it does. The outcome of what it is in this room is not dependent on anyone saying, oh, I'm a little hot, I'm going to turn it on, or I'm a little cold, I'm going to turn it off, right? That would be, you have to engage your brain every time it turns on and off. And if no one's in the room, it's just going to keep running the whole time. And we're going to come in the room one day and it's going to be 52 degrees in here, right? That would be horrible for the planet and for us, right? So we set up an automatic feedback loop in order to do things that are positive outcomes. Do you recognize, who recognizes this? Does anyone work on cars? Does anyone work on 20th century cars? Okay, just forget about that then. How about this? Do you recognize this? This is supply and demand. How much do eggs, does anybody grocery shop? You grocery shop? Can you believe the price of eggs? How much do eggs cost? $5 per dozen. What did eggs cost before? 99 cents for a dozen. What's going on here? Explain it. When demand goes up, supply can't meet demand. If supply can't meet demand, what happens to the price?
Price goes up.
It goes up. And is there someone making a decision for all egg producers? Maybe. If there's a monopoly, then someone makes a decision. But if there's no monopoly and there's a scarcity of eggs, you increase the price of eggs. It's like, I'm going to have Cheerios for breakfast, not eggs, because eggs are too expensive. So there's an automatic feedback loop response to scarcity. Market prices is the most powerful and clearest operation of a reflexive mechanism in human history, I think. What do you think? It happens automatically unless there's a monopoly or close to monopoly.
Let's say.
So reflexive feedback loops operate automatically. And when these reflexive feedback loops are put into play and people are making decisions within the context of these feedback loops, it's like playing a game. So if you want to win the game, you have to do certain things. So how many of you heard of the prisoner's dilemma? Heard of the prisoner's dilemma? How many of you have not heard of the prisoner's dilemma or would like a refresher? Okay, this is the prisoner's dilemma. Now, you might ask yourself, what does that have to do with architecture? Well, this prisoner's dilemma is a lot like how humans respond to certain conditions in architecture within larger context. So it may not be clear to begin with, but I'm hoping it will be by the end of this hour.
Let's say Mr. Blue and Miss Red have each been arrested for some minor crime. The police think they committed a more serious crime, but they don't have enough evidence to convict them. They need a confession. They take them and put them in separate rooms so they can't talk and play a little game.
That's important. They can't talk.
To try to force a confession, the police give them each a choice. Admit your partner committed the crime and you will go free. We'll pardon you for the minor crime, but your partner will have to spend 3 years in prison. If you stay silent and your partner lets us know that you were the one who really did it, then you're going to have to go away for 3 years. They know that the police don't have any evidence, and if they both stay silent, then they will only go to prison 1 year each for the minor crime. If they both betray each other, then they'll both go to prison for 2 years each.
What would you do?
Each partner can do one of two things: stay silent or betray. Staying silent would be cooperating and betraying would be defecting. If they both stay silent, then they each spend a year in prison. If one betrays and the other stays silent, then the betrayer goes free and the silent spends 3 years in prison. If they both betray, then it's 2 years each. So what are they going to do? Well, they should cooperate. That's the best option for the group if we add the total number of years in prison. But let's take it from Red's perspective. If she thinks Blue is going to stay silent, then she should betray so she can go free. Going free is better than spending a year in prison. If she thinks he's going to betray her, then she should definitely betray. 2 years in jail is better than 3 and being made a fool of. Blue is in the exact same situation and will think the exact same thing. He should betray if she stays silent, and he should betray if she betrays. They should have both cooperated, but from an individual standpoint, they noticed they could always gain by defecting if they have no control over what the other person's going to do. So they'll both defect to try to better their own situation, but come away not only hurting the group, but themselves. Individually, they're worse off than if they both cooperated. This situation is pretty made up, but it has some real world analogs. A common example is with marketing. Let's say 2 cigarette companies, Red Strikes and Smooth Blue.
We don't have time for analogies.
Let's say Mr. Blue and Miss Red have each been arrested for some minor crime. The police think.
So it's a game show. Have you seen this?
written inside. I will ask you in a moment to choose either the split or the steal. If you both choose the split ball, you will split today's jackpot of £40,015 and you will go home, each of you, with £20,007.50. If one of you chooses split and the other one chooses steal, whoever chooses the split ball goes home with nothing.
Nothing.
But whoever chooses the steal ball goes home with the whole £40,015.
That's what I want, right?
There's the rub. If you both choose the steel ball, you both go home.
With nothing. What would you do? Do you want to see what happens? Okay, let's see some more.
We have come such a long way together. I've brought you through, you brought through me through, so we're both equals 20,000, which is half, is more than I thought I would go away with today. So I am more than happy to split with you if I can trust you to do the same with me. I guaranteed you. I can
You know
take
what's
you
gonna
now,
happen.
I guaranteed you at the beginning of the game. You took me through that round, I would split.
Do they know what's gonna happen?
Split with you.
What I'm
They
gonna say
should.
is,
They've seen the show.
if I play fair, I will come away with some change on that money. I'm gonna look into your eyes when we're asked to make a decision, and I'm gonna be truthfully honest with you. If I look into your eyes and I see that you're genuine and you're gonna split that
I
money,
believe him.
I promise you,
Do you believe
I will
him?
make the same decision.
What would you do?
I'll be more straightforward and honest than that.
What would you do?
There's three options.
Three options,
Three options. Split, you steal, or lose.
two options. You can either say split,
Three outcomes.
three outcomes, four
You either-
outcomes.
You either have.
Okay, three
all
outcomes.
Three.
Yeah,
Either
either they both say split and they both get half. Or one says steal and one says split. Person who says split gets nothing, the person who gets steal gets 40,000. Right, that's the second outcome. That's the one I want. And then there's one where they both say steal and they both get nothing,
because they're greedy.
right? So what do you do?
I take my chances to split.
Yeah.
You take your chances and split. But what if you've seen the show before? This happens every week. They see it week after week. They see it over and over again. And more often than not, this is what happens. You ready? You think,
So now I know what the outcome is.
you want to see what happens? Here we go.
Involved until next time.
Oh, it's over. But let's interview the contestants.
Split ball, I can't really explain how I felt. I was just
Winner,
so-
loser,
I
loser.
lost over £20,000. I was speechless. I don't even know how to put it into words. It's a life-changing amount of money that I just
Loser.
had in my house.
We hate her for losing.
Yeah.
We love him for stealing and winning.
He deserved.
I think they both split.
No,
No.
he said steal, she said split. She got nothing. He got 40,000 pounds. We love him, the winner. We despise her, this pathetic fool that got taken advantage of, right? It's not even about the money. It just feels bad to be so lied to and betrayed. So see what that feels like? So in this scenario, in this analogy, the rules are written. Whoever steals, whoever successfully lies, wins. When you write the rules of the game to reward economically, reward ExxonMobil. See where we're going here? When you economically reward those with privilege and power for using their privilege and power to grab more, then that's all you can do. If you have privilege and power, you grab more because otherwise you're a loser, right? So what would you do if you were the king, if you were the president, if you were extremely wealthy, and you had purchased a Supreme Court judge, or if you could control who's in Senate, or you could control the laws that are written, what would you do? Well, I'm not a sucker on a lot of things. I'm a good father. I care about, I volunteer at the church. I'm a good person. I volunteer in the community. I want what's best for the world. I'm concerned about climate change. But the rules are the rules. You have no choice because you cannot be the sucker. Yes. How explain? If you don't play the game. So if you don't play the game, that's fine. But how many people have to choose to not play the game? So they sort of played it. You choose not to play the game, and you convince others. You can play the game? No, not gonna play the game. We're all together in this. We're extremely convincing. Nobody's gonna play the game. Nobody's gonna play the game. I'll play that game. Right? Are you gonna play the game?
I'm gonna play the game.
Okay, I'll just give you the 40,000 right now.
I'll take it.
So it's like the flooding situation in the village in the Netherlands. Unless everyone is together and decides this is not good for us, we need to change the system. Unless you can do that, there's always going to be someone willing to just take the $40,000.
But she makes the point, because you showed us prisoner's dilemma, and the whole point of the prisoner's dilemma is that you have a choice.
Do you
So
have a
it's-
choice?
Yeah, you always have a choice. That's the dilemma.
Mhm.
Because I can choose what's best for the group, or I can choose what's best for me. So I don't understand what you're trying to say when you say, I don't have the choice, I don't want to be the sucker, because,
So are you okay being her?
yeah.
Okay,
Karma.
that's, wow. Is there another option? Watch this. So when we had more time and had less to cover, we would say, does anyone have a roommate or has had a roommate that left their stuff in the sink?
Yeah.
We would do that. Okay, who was that person? Let's have name names. Go ahead. They're not here.
Oh, I mean.
You know, let's say it's Jimmy. So do you think Jimmy should be the president of ExxonMobil? No, because he can't even take care of the sink. He's so sad.
worrying about it. So he didn't have time.
So then we go through and say, okay, you know each other.
To wash the dishes in the morning.
Well, I nominate, sorry, I forgot your name.
Yes.
I nominate Jess to be president of ExxonMobil, not Jimmy, because did you hear what she said? She argued forcefully. No, maybe you could be vice president. Oh, busted. Let's say she doesn't. Let's say she lives her values. What happens when she says, okay, I'm announcing today that ExxonMobil is going to be a responsible steward of the global atmosphere, and we vow to take our petroleum reserves and keep them in the ground for the good of everyone. What happens next? There's a bunch of Jimmys who are the shareholders, and she is immediately removed from her position. She can't afford to send her kids to college now because you know how much it costs to send someone to college? Are you kidding me? Right? So she would rather lose. She would rather lose and send her kids to Bunker Hill Community College than.
Why are you shaming community?
It's great.
A lot of money.
I know. Remember the number we put up?
Yeah, so why are you shaming
I
community
know.
colleges?
Because I'm trying to be realistic.
Wherever my kids want to go.
Okay. Yes.
I think it's psychological minds.
There's what?
It's your cause and effect.
Cause and effect.
And reality. So it's since it's confined, because of that is her psychologically being destroyed and financially as well.
Right. So we are gonna we're gonna remove Jess and we're gonna put Jimmy in there, who's gonna do the right thing. Do what he's required to do. Pump as much oil as he possibly can, as quickly as he can. Without driving down the prices too much. Maybe we should form a monopoly group, play golf together and conspire with each other to keep the price of oil high. Let's do that. That sounds good. Whoever plays the system most egregiously, whoever lies and steals the most, wins and gets the most money. Not always true, but in this case, it's true. And in the case of petroleum reserves around the world, it's true. We're trying to figure out why the world is the way it is. And this is my offering, is to try to explain why the world is the way it is. It's the prisoner's dilemma. No one wants to be a chump. Everyone wants to win because it's hard. In a future class, we're going to talk about where you're going in your life. How much are you going to make when you graduate? How much of a house can you and your partner afford? And how do you make decisions based on that? So shit gets real.
But I think like what you're promoting is the opposite of what you said, where like, oh, the only way you're gonna be successful is if you choose to lie, cheat, and steal so that.
I don't like it, but I'm
Yeah,
not,
but that's not the only pathway.
it's
though.
not the
And
only
it's not the
pathway,
Like you should promote.
but it's baked into this system. It's baked into the prisoner's dilemma. It's baked into the current rules of the petroleum economy. And thus, if you're looking for an explanation why we're running out of water, it's because unless you pump, even if you're pumping the water out onto the ground and letting it evaporate, unless you pump, you lose your water rights. So it's in my best interest to just pump away, use up the water, let it evaporate. I'm not even growing almonds. 3 gallons of water per almond. I'm not even growing almonds, right? I'm just pumping. The incentive system is pump the water out or you lose the value of those rights of water pumping. And you're a chump if you don't pump the water out on the ground. Even if 99 out of 100 people decide to do the right thing, thank you very much, then there's always, I don't want to pick on you. It's just rational self-interest, right? Explain, why would you do it?
I mean,
You know the planet.
it's already there. The system's already there. It's not gonna be fixed in our lifetime. As we'll play the game.
And another way of saying that, hey, it's not, don't look at me. I'm a good person. If you want to, if it weren't me,
I mean, I'll even take the bad person card.
okay, what's your name and what's your name? Pete Ricardo. If Pete doesn't do it, Pete doesn't grab it, then Ricardo's going to grab it. Right? So if I know it's gone no matter what, I might as well be the one benefiting from it. So at least I'm not a chump. At least my kids get to go to Wentworth.
I feel like that's contradictory to what you were talking about the other day, where you said like,
It is.
oh, my generation, your parents' generation should be apologizing because you have to fix everything. But then you're standing there telling me that I can't fix everything because the system will never change and I should just play to win.
Well, I'm apologizing because the system is the way it is. We could have changed the system. And
So
we
you could
didn't.
have changed it. Why can't I change it?
I love that question. Thank you.
So, like, you're saying you're apologizing, but it's like you were also born into it, like, it's like people before you set it on, so like, it's not necessarily your fault either. Like,
Yeah, I don't blame me. I'm just following the rules as I inherited. Right? But it's hard to have your eyes open and be okay with it. I'm very uncomfortable. I'm very uncomfortable to have been born to privilege and to be the beneficiary of all these things that were not available to us. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. It pisses me off. And I don't think it's okay. Thank you very much. I could be spending money on therapists, but instead I get paid to share this burden with you. I feel a lot better because It's all in your hands. But I'm also rooting for you to change the system. Watch this, even without changing the system, there's a way to game the system. Watch this. You ready?
Abraham, I want you to trust me. 100%, I'm going to pick the steel ball.
Sorry, you're gonna.
I'm going to choose the steel ball.
You're gonna take.
I want you to do split, and I promise you that I will split the money with you.
Right?
But after you take steel,
It's kind of cool,
Yeah.
right?
you're gonna take steel.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take split.
yeah,
So you take the money
and I will split it with you.
after the show.
Yeah. I promise you I'll do that. If you do steel, we both walk away with nothing. I'm telling you 100% I'm going to do it.
I appreciate that. Right, I'll give you another alternative. Why don't we just both pick split?
I'm not going to pick split. I'm going to steal. Abraham, honestly, 100% going to steal.
It's in your nature to steal.
No, I'm honest, and I'm going to tell you
You're
that
an honest.
I am. That's why I'm telling you I'm going to steal. If you do split, then I will
Well,
split the
I
money.
can't see what's in it.
Okay, well, I'm going to steal, so I'm going to leave with nothing.
Where's your brains coming from? I can't work out.
I know that I'm a decent guy, and I will split the money with you.
Well, we should just go split it.
No, I'm going to do steal.
There is no.
No, I know there is. I know there is.
He's panicking.
If I
Panicking.
gave you my word, now let me tell you what my word means.
Okay.
My father once said to you, a man who doesn't keep his word is not a man. He's not worth nothing. Not worth a dollar.
I agree.
So
Abraham, I'm going to steal. So you've got the choice. You want to steal, and my both
Get it?
with nothing because you know I've told
See
you
what's
my
happening?
intention, and I've told you that I will split the money with you, Abraham.
if I gave my word that I was going to split, I would split, and you're going to take
Get
steal.
it? So what do you think happens?
think he should split, it both, we both split, He's ensuring that. That is split.
Let's find out.
It's a tough one.
We've lost it. We've lost everything. You're walking away with no money because you're an idiot.
No, that's not
Split or steal?
Congratulations,
All right.
He saved £6,800.
Right? That's what it takes. That's what it takes to win, to collectively win in this system, is you have to game the system. You have to understand it from outside the system well enough to know how to game the system. So there is another alternative. You're right, Jess. There is another alternative. But what would be better? The better way is to change the rules of the game. Instead of incentivizing lying and stealing, we should change the rules of the game so that good behavior leads to profitability. So right now, any company that wants to do the right thing, like the world is filled with people with good intentions and companies that want to do the right thing. The first thing they will say is, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to use more expensive packaging that is biodegradable. And any packaging that my company produces that isn't biodegradable, we are providing postage paid return mailers so that the packaging can be mailed back to us. And we will take care of that packaging. So we will have a zero waste impact on the world from our products. You're welcome. And then what happens next? Can you guess what happens next to that company? It's like ExxonMobil. That company follows through. It costs more for them to provide their product, and it puts them at a competitive disadvantage. And there's a good chance that they will price themselves out of the market. So fewer and fewer people will take advantage of their products, and or they will go out of business altogether because they can't compete when they're doing the right thing. What's a better scenario? That's this scenario. The company does the right thing and they go out of business, but at least they did the right thing. It's good karma, right? They did the right thing. And their kids are pissed off that they have to go to Bunker Hill Community College, even though it's just as good or better than mine. Why aren't you? Right? So instead, what does the German government do? They make a law. Every company in Germany is obligated by law to take back their packaging. I buy something, I take it home, I unpackage it, I have the thing in my home, and by law, I have to be able to take my packaging back to the store, and they have to take it from me and say, thank you for bringing your packaging back. There's no competitive advantage to creating plastic, single-use plastic packaging that then goes into the landfill. That's against the law, the way it should be, right? So that's an example where the German government changed the rules and everyone abides by those rules. They have to, it's the law. And so the market operates within those guidelines and it operates for better outcomes for the planet. That was easy. Why don't we just do that? Why? It comes back to power and privilege. We have enough power and privilege in some systems that they say, I'd rather not. And so it doesn't happen. You cannot pass the laws. You cannot change the rules. You cannot. And we're stuck with this and the global climate disaster and the housing affordability crisis and the transportation problems and the built environment. We start with this in the present and move back in time, asking the question, how did we get to this situation where the planet is dying and your parents and I have to apologize to you? How did we get to this situation? We're going to spend the entire semester figuring that out.
What if our generation failed for a better future in 80 years? What happens?
You're more of the same.
Then this was happening now.
Well, more. And based on that, Elon Musk and others are saying, maybe we need an escape plan. So the wealthiest 0.1% are preparing escape plans, including going to Mars. And they're building gated communities, and architects are designing gated communities with fortified barriers to ensure the safety of the wealthy elite when the zombie apocalypse. Well, it's not going to be a zombie apocalypse. It's not The Walking Dead. It's just an analogy for the majority of humans being upset that the wealthiest elite are taking all the money and resources. So it's going to be more of that. And it's going to be, and the worse it gets, the stronger the incentive will operate to steal and pillage and dump and grab resources. So the worse things get, the faster the resources will be extracted and faster the pollution will be dumped and the faster the climate change will happen. So the solution is to change the rules of the game, in part through design of the built environment, so that it reverses the incentive, so that there's an incentive to do good things rather than incentive to do bad things. Because if I'm a capitalist, the only thing driving me is the profit motive. If you make it profitable for me to do bad things, guess what the outcome is going to be? Lots and lots of bad things done aggressively and with enthusiasm and a lot of creative energy. But if you rewire this whole situation and you make it profitable to do good things, I'm still going to make money. I'm still going to be the winner. I'm just going to do whatever it takes to get the money, even if it means doing good things, making the world a better place, and solving the climate crisis. How about that? The only thing we need to do is to change the rules, and the outcome will change, even if people are the same mixture of good intentions and bad behavior. Even with that same profile of behavior of humans in the world, things will get better. It's not about making everyone go to church and be moral and do the right thing and believe in karma. It's about changing the rules so that good people do good things, they make them money, and people who behave badly do good things and have good behavior because it makes them money. Right? There is an operating system that is favoring certain outcomes and moving us away from other outcomes. If you want to change the outcome, change the operating system. And so there, at any given time, there are changes to the operating system that are being made. And sometimes those changes in the operating system favor positive outcomes, sometimes negative outcomes. Having an awareness of the relationship between the rules of the game of the operating system and the outcomes we desire, that is the secret weapon of game theory and this understanding of reflexive mechanisms. Not all of them, but some of them, a lot of them, some very important operating system rules operate through the built environment. A lot of people think it's not possible to build safe, affordable housing with urban services in the neighborhood. It's just not economically viable. That's where we come in. We understand what's at stake. We understand how the operating system of communities and built environments work. And we identify opportunities to change the rules and thus change the outcomes. It's still hot in here, isn't it? Maybe we switch to chlorofluorocarbons. Oh, we took away chlorofluorocarbons. Hydrofluorocarbons. Can someone turn on the air conditioning that now uses hydrofluorocarbons? Again, the air conditioner is what matters. We don't have time for this. We'll do this some other time. So let's get to the built environment part. Enough game theory, right? Barcelona. We're trying to figure out where these things started, and it took us from Medellin, Colombia, to Caracas, Venezuela, to Bogota, Colombia, to Curitiba, Brazil, and then back and back and back. And it took us to Barcelona. So we now think that Barcelona is a very important piece of the puzzle. It's so important that Wentworth, starting about 10 years ago, said, hey, let's bring students there for a study abroad semester. Don't you wish that were possible? Should we do that? Do you want to go to Barcelona? Who's going to Barcelona? Two? Just two of you are going to Barcelona? Really? Girona, Spain, in the fall? Just you two. Three of you are going to Barcelona. God, I wish I could do that with you guys. So in Barcelona, the three of you will walk these streets and experience what happened in preparation for the 1992 Olympics. See the richness of these drawings. This is a way of drawing that treats urban fabric as if it's architecture. And by looking at parts of the city as if it's a piece of architecture, you're actually able to do really, really cool things. my rooftop apartment last fall. Right there. There it is, still there. So we're gonna, some of us are gonna spend the entirety of the fall semester figuring out how Barcelona went from being depressed and deprived and held back and kind of just stuck in the 1930s. A dictator came in, and there was it was a coup d'etat. This dictator won the civil war that ensued, and that led the way into Hitler, Mussolini, and World War II. So in a way, the struggle to stop this dictator in Spain, when it failed, it led to some pretty dark things in human history. So that dictator that came to power in the 30s held on to power until 1975. And during that time, the entire country kind of shut down socially, economically. Not much happened. There was some big projects, big hospitals, but not much in terms of locally grown economic growth and entrepreneurship. So in the 1980s, the dictator was gone. Democratic government was struggling to come back. And in the city of Barcelona, they said, we got to do something to kickstart the whole thing. They said, but we need some incentive, we need some stimulation. So they competed to attract the Olympics. They got the Olympics. And what do you do when you get the Olympics? You pull together the best architects and designers and urban designers and artists and social movements, and you bring them together and you say, how do we physically transform the city so that it becomes an instrument for social transformation? And so they took the 9 most depressed and deprived neighborhoods, and they transformed the markets, they transformed the streetscapes, they transformed the public amenities. The housing, they didn't change it. The private institutions, they left them the way they were. But by acting on public amenities, public institutions, public spaces, public mobility programs, the buses, the trains, the trams, by focusing on the design of the urban public realm, they stimulated each of those 9 neighborhoods back to life. And long story short, because we don't have time, we'll pick this up in Spain in a few months. Barcelona is one of the glorious success stories of an urban revitalization that leads to social transformation, social well-being, and improvement in the quality of life. Even for the poorest, not even for, especially for the most deprived communities. It turns out that if your city is ravaged by crime and drugs and problems and filth and lack of respect for public property in the streets and the life of the city, and it's a dangerous place, it doesn't, if you lavish services and improvements on the wealthiest neighborhoods, it just gets worse, right? Because there's a profound sense of betrayal, and the winners win more and the losers lose more. So why should I not pee in the street at night? To hell with this city, right? Instead, they instilled a sense of pride and dignity in the poorest neighborhoods. It became great places to live. And because they did it widely, because it was a collective shared effort, it did not result in gentrification, which is a word that you who don't live on campus are profoundly concerned with, because it costs a lot to live in these horrible apartments on Mission Hill. And by the way, if you live on campus, it's the same thing. A big part of what keeps this school afloat is we run a hotel. And there happens to be some activities in the lobby called education and classes. But the hotel part of this school is essential. We learned that by the pandemic. When we stopped having classes in person, the financial prospects of the whole school went down the toilet. And we said, oh my God, I don't care about spreading. We got to have classes in person. And so we did. And we're building back up the money in part by raising tuition. So the quality of the space, so the takeaway, the punchline of this is by that the built environment and design of the built environment and transformation of the built environment can be a powerful instrument for social transformation and a changing of the rules of the social contract, the social order of a city, of a society, can be profoundly changed through the very convincing transformation of physical environments. So some of the best architecture that we love to look at is from Barcelona in the 1990s. It's kind of become the poster child of what architects can and should do in the 21st century. And it had a profound influence on Latin America. But it was already happening in Brazil in the 70s. Jaime Lerner was an architect, is an architect. Jaime Lerner was a very good architect in the city of Curitiba, Brazil. And he and his colleagues entered a competition for a design of civil space in his city of Curitiba, and they lost. But they were so convinced, he and his team were so convinced that what they had proposed was an important transformative step that he went into another contest. He said, I'm an architect, I have a very successful architectural practice, but it's not enough. I'm going to run for mayor. He ran for mayor, he won, and he implemented the system. He invented what we now call bus rapid transit. Every city in the world, including Boston, is either planning a bus rapid transit system now or has one. It's called the Silver Line. It costs a tiny fraction of what subways and trains cost. And so this architect designed a new transportation system that cost a fraction of what the alternatives were. And he transformed his city. And it was one of the most successful cities in Brazil, but it was facing the crippling impact of increasing automobile dependency. And he avoided that by creating these corridors served by bus rapid transit, with buses coming every 60 seconds. Most buses in a very healthy system can serve not the 200 people per day that some Boston buses serve, and not the 20,000 people a day that very crowded, successful bus systems serve, but 2 million people a day. Because it comes every 60 seconds, people are paying their fare before the bus comes. When the bus shows up, all the doors open, people come out one door and they come in the other door. It's a miracle of efficiency and 2 million people a day. And so I don't need a car. Who can be bothered with that? It's air conditioned, it's nice, it's clean, it's dignified. Here we know who the winners and losers are. The winners are driving and the losers are waiting for the bus. They're riding their stupid little bicycles to and from school, right? But here, the winners are in the buses. So there's a social formulation of status that is enacted through the physical design.
Is there like a reason in Boston why it's like I can't pay for like the bus or the train on my phone yet? Why?
If you're taking commuter rail, you can.
Yeah, I know.
Well, the larger story of the MBTA is they are profoundly and cripplingly in debt. And because voters like us have not yet made a governor responsible for forgiving the debt and abolishing the MBTA and rebuilding it from scratch so that it can actually provide transit services. Until that happens, the MBTA cannot afford to do anything right. The only thing it can afford to do is cancel service. Go from every 15 minutes to 22 minutes, or from 22 minutes to every 42 minutes. That's the only thing, that's the only game in town. Even if we make it free to take this line from this neighborhood, we can do certain things that seems like we're making things better. But those tiny little improvements are there to conceal the fact that the larger system is being shrunk every year. The prices go up, service shrinks. It's kind of like tuition.
Over the 1970s.
So much about Jamie Lerner. We don't have time for. It'll be in the slideshow if you want to watch these little video clips. Let's go to Caracas. No, let's go to Medellin. We already did this. Most dangerous place in the world today is Caracas and Los Cabos, Mexico, with 110 murders per 100,000. Medellin had 4 times that. The highest murder rate in human history. In the 90s. And with help from the United States, the Colombian military over the years slowly but surely drove the narco traffickers out of the cities, including Medellin, and into the countryside. And then over the next decade, the late 90s, early 2000s, the army started to push back the drug cartels, and the drug armies, the soldiers of the drug wars on the drug cartel side started coming back to Medellin. And it looked like all of these men, because they were mostly men, were going to come back into Medellin. They left Medellin when they were 4th grade. They didn't have an education, but they're really good at one thing. They can use that AK-47 really well. And they have it, it's rolled up in their duffel bag and their clothes. They get off the bus, they arrive in Medellin. What are they going to do? They're going to do what they do best, right? So Sergio Fajardo ran for mayor, son of a prominent architect. And here's the thing that I'm adding here that I haven't talked about before. Because I moved my family here and lived here for 4 months, I was able to interview people and figure this out. In the 50s, Medellin was a huge industrial center, and it needed electricity, and it had this amazing hill, very wet countryside nearby. And they were able to build a dam, huge dam, to fill these valleys with water. They moved several towns, and from that water and this dam, they were able to generate free electricity and supply not just the entirety of Colombia with electricity, but also Venezuela, Ecuador, neighboring countries. They were able to send electricity around. And the beautiful thing is that this company was owned by the city, because no private enterprise was able to provide so much electricity to keep the industrial boom going as they needed. So the city, the government said, we'll finance the building of this dam and we'll make a company. And in the charter of this company founded in the 50s, it says 10% of all of the money coming in has to go to social infrastructures in the region. And so hundreds of millions of dollars every year could be flooding into the services and supporting things like the MBTA if we had a deal like this, right? we don't have to charge a fare at all. Just ride the trains and buses, and lots of trains and buses. We could do that. But instead, they had an operating system that said, listen, someone along the line is going to take that hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're just going to steal it. So because someone at the end of the line is waiting and willing to steal it, then as the money comes through, you have to steal it. It's gone, right? It's good as gone. Right? He's going to take it all. So if there's anything coming your way, you better get some. It's not like the outcome is any different because you're taking some money. The outcome is exactly the same. So are you going to take some of the hundreds of millions?
Sure, yeah. Some of it.
Okay. So even if someone says no, even if you said no, I'm not going to take it. No, I'm not going to take it. No, you convince everyone, no, I'm not going to take it. No, I'm not going to. It's gone, right? The outcome is exactly the same. It's like, again, the Dutch village. There are 12 properties and 12 segments of dike. If no one builds dike, the village floods. If 11 people build the dike and the 12th person doesn't, the village floods. The only way the village doesn't flood is if everyone who has a part of the dike decides to not let their dike fail. So you get agreement and the dikes hold and we're all good, right? You need the same kind of situation. So Fajardo, when he's running for mayor, governor, president, he makes the same promise. I promise you, not a single centavo will be stolen out of this money. It's all going to go to public services. So when he came to Wentworth to talk about this, I asked him, where's all this money coming from? And he tried to explain this. I didn't really understand it, so I did what any of us would do. I moved my family there and figured it out. So now we're getting to the topic of the week, right? Designing for life. The larger system, in order for any of this architecture to matter, Fajardo and his architects had to game the larger, they had to understand the larger system, and they had to change the rules. He had to run for mayor, governor, president in order to change the rules of the game. Now the rules of the game are, here's $900 million every year. Who can make the best use of that $900 million a year for the greatest benefit of the most people? Go. And when he was running, he was a wealthy elite. He was one of the top, 1/10 of 1%. He was the 1%er. His father was a famous architect. He went to school in the US, got a PhD in mathematics. Very successful, very privileged. But his country was suffering from the highest murder rate in human history. And he and his friends said, we got to figure this out, no matter what it takes, even if it means changing the rules. So in that way, it's like the Netherlands being flooded. It's like Singapore, remember the lecture a week ago? It's like Singapore expected to die off. It's like really serious situations where people say, listen, it's over for us unless we figure out what to do and do whatever it takes, even if it means providing services for the poorest people. And in each case, that's what it was. In the Netherlands, everyone has a say because everyone has to maintain their dike. It wasn't just the king, it's everyone. So democracy came to the Netherlands before it came to any other place in the world that had been so-called civilized, because there's something about civilizing that means no democracy. So the Netherlands had to share power and authority. Singapore that was a dictator saying, we're gonna give housing to everyone, public housing for everyone, public transportation for everyone. You don't need cars, we're gonna provide it. And they became one of the greatest places in the world to send your business to, because the population, I explained this, right? So they did it by providing the infrastructure for the majority of people. Barcelona, that's what they did. Curitiba, Bogota, Caracas, and now Medellin. Fajardo said, listen, my fellow 1%ers, I know we're used to controlling everything. And I know we were going to put a luxury cable car to serve the wealthiest neighborhoods, to connect the wealthiest neighborhoods to the subway system. I know we were going to do that, but I'm asking you, please, look at the violence that's engulfing our city. The drug warriors are coming back to town. We need to do something. I beg you, please elect me, and let's just push pause just for a decade or two on raping and pillaging society and collecting all the wealth to the 1%. Let's just give something back for a few years and see how that goes. Maybe we can reduce the violence. That's what they did, and that's how it worked. Instead of putting the luxury cable car in the wealthiest neighborhood, they identified the place where most of the bodies were piling up in the drug wars. And that's what they did first. Even though these are hermetically sealed boxes and kind of bad architecture, they are powerful symbols that brought dignity to this neighborhood, to these people. And they changed it completely to satisfy the demands of the neighbors. They had meeting after meeting after meeting when the architects said, what do you need? And they said, you can't fool us. You're not going to listen to a word we say. We're poor people. You're fancy architects. We're not even going to tell you what we need. And then the architects came back the next week and said, no, really, what do you need? And they came back week after week. They brought sociologists, they brought priests and nuns, and they did whatever. They asked the children to draw their vision of their future, until finally, after hundreds of meetings with thousands of participants, they started ever so slowly to trust the architects. And they said, we need a place to have our community gatherings. And the architects said, done, you got it. Oh, maybe they're serious. Okay, we need a place to learn. We need classrooms. Done. What else do you need? We need kitchens. We need collective laundries. Done. We need a way to get down to town. How about this cable car? We have one. We're about to put it into the wealthy neighborhoods. Would you like one of those? Yes. Done. So it took a lot of effort for the architects to convince the community that they really did want to satisfy what they need. So they did it. And then they did it 4 more times. In the 4 years that Fajardo was mayor, and there's a 4-year term limit. So he had to do it all in 4 years, and then he's out. So between the time Manuel and I talked to him in Harvard Square, and then when he came to visit Wentworth, he finished 5 of these library parks. The next mayor had to do the same thing because the precedent had been set. I forgot to look in my office. I have a guidebook. We don't have time for all this. But there are these short video clips where Fajardo is explaining what it is they did. Here's him in Watson Hall in 2008. I can't look at this photo. It makes me too emotional. So the key that I had a hard time photographing, I bought a drone, I learned how to fly it, but it's really hard to capture how connected these self-produced neighborhoods, that's what we call them now. We don't call them slums or informal settlements, they're self-produced neighborhoods, how they're connected to these library parks. These people own this library park. It's theirs. We don't have time to look at how these ideas translated into Manuel Delgado's, maybe we do. But long story short, and this is a very long story, made very short, and I'm going to take every second of the next 5 minutes to capture it, 4 minutes, is that in 2007, well, you read it in the reading, right? 2007, there was this article, I put it on the fridge, Manuel said, I know these guys, and off we went with Designing for Life. We had 5 studios where students were asked to design these types of interventions for the city of Caracas. We studied what was happening in Medellin, and then we looked at the opportunities presented by the city of Caracas, and we worked with students to design these things. In the meantime, some of the participants in our 2008 Designing for Life gathering here with Fajardo, they got together and entered this design competition, won it. This is Manuel Delgado working with Medellin architects Jorge Perez and the firm of Opus. They won this competition, and we gathered, we had the second Designing for Life event here at Wentworth in 2013, where Manuel, Jorge, and the principals of Opus said, listen, we know we won, but there were so many good ideas in the other competition entries, and they're all friends of ours. Let's invite them to Boston, and let's compare our different proposals and figure out how Manuel and his team can implement this park design for the, with taking advantage of all of the good ideas. So we did that, and all the good ideas came out. And some of the people, one of the people decided he should move to Boston and go to school at Harvard. And now last week, he's full-time faculty here at Wentworth, Ignacio Cardona. First time he came to the United States was when Wentworth invited him as part of this competition review. And these are the principles behind La Carlota. We said, we recognize these. This is what happened in Curitiba. This is what we did in Barcelona. This is what we did in Medellin and Bogota. And now we're going to do it in Caracas. These are a powerful set of principles that reach beyond the normal scope of work of architects. We should base the course you teach, Robert, on the larger framing of forces that all come together in the built environment. So that's why we're doing this. That's what explains this crazy guy teaching this lecture every Thursday, right? There's no other explanation except that this is a powerful basis for the design professions to move into the world in the 21st century. Let's make it the basis of the urbanism concentration. Let's make it a big part of the thesis program at Wentworth. Let's develop a new graduate degree, a one-year degree, Master of Urbanism degree, which we're now developing. We're hoping to launch it soon. Let's have a third Designing for Life exhibition across the street right now in CIIS this summer. It's the summary and the culmination of the studio work that Wentworth students have produced. Have you seen it? It's worth looking at. I should probably take you out in the field like you asked last Tuesday, and we should go see it. It's so important that we're going to do a study abroad in Barcelona. It's the built environment, the ecosystems, it's the social systems of social infrastructures that either lead to catastrophic automobile dependence, as we see it in Boston and Caracas, or it leads to a more egalitarian sharing of mobility access that is possible when you have a good transportation system and networks of green space like the Emerald Necklace. Mixed use public spaces. This is Ignacio's work here. And this is what architecture can do when you look at it from above. When you don't just focus on the architectural object, but when what's important is the interaction between the building and the landscapes and the systems and the human experience of those systems. Okay. No time. Go ahead. Thank you, everyone.